We are on the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:05 a.m. Here begins Volume 1, Video Number 1, in the deposition of Robert Ingold, in the matter of DBJ Yuma versus Yuma County Airport Authority, in the Superior Court of the State of Arizona, in and for the County of Yuma. Case number S1400CV2010-1309. Today's date is April 20th, 2012. Our court reporter is Jerry Koash. My name is John Bogus, certified videographer representing Koash & Koash. This video deposition is taking place at 268 South 1st Avenue, Yuma, Arizona 85364. Counsel, please identify yourselves and state whom you represent.
Carlos Gutierrez on behalf of the plaintiffs.
Mark Lieberman on behalf of Yuma County Airport Authority.
Would the court reporter please swear in the witness?
Sir, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Please state your full name for the record.
Robert F. Ingold, Jr.
Mr. Ingold, what's your address and how long have you lived there?
Been there 26 years.
Can you please summarize your education and work history?
I've got a degree from the University of Arizona in finance, minor agriculture. I spent my first 5 years of my work out of college working for a bank as a trust officer. Spent the next roughly 15 years, 12 to 15 years as a real estate developer, working for a developer in California and on my own. I moved to Arizona in 1985, bought a beer distributorship, and ran that until about 2000. Sold that in 2000 and went back in the real estate business in Yuma. My family and I own a 180-acre industrial park in Yuma, and we manage real estate and own real estate in Southern California, Orange County, San Diego. And that's what I do today. Today I'm semi-retired, but I run a family investment company.
What type of investment company?
We have stocks, bonds, real estate.
How long have you been on the board for the Yuma County Airport Authority?
I'm sorry, my second, third-year term. I've been on the board about 4.5 years.
And what is your current position on the board?
I'm now president of the Airport Authority Board.
Have you held other positions?
I was first vice president.
Excuse me. You have to wait until he's done with this question. Okay. Have you held other positions?
On the board before?
Yes, I was first vice president, and I was secretary.
Okay. What are your job responsibilities as the president of the Airport Authority?
I guess the correct term probably is chairman of the board, not president. I mean, I'm sorry. My responsibilities are I run the board meetings monthly. I'm probably the chief contact between the board and the airport manager, Mr. Williams, and that's pretty much my job.
Do you commonly interact with the board officers, such as Mr. Williams or Mr. Hinkle?
Objection before. The way this works is, he states a question. If I think there's an objection, I'll state the objection, then you answer. Unless I tell you for some reason not to.
Well, I mean, I don't quite understand the question. I mean, you asked if I interact with myself.
Do you work closely with the officers of the Yuma County Airport Authority?
Okay, that means the people who are hired by us to run the airport.
Correct, such as the president, the chief financial officer.
Yes, I do, but the board does also, and we are involved. We're involved, yes.
How does the board members of the Yuma County Airport Authority become apprised of the issues that come before them when they are called to vote on any particular matter?
Usually we've had discussion for some time before we vote on anything. We really don't vote on anything that happens that same day. We usually have some discussion about it before we vote on it.
And as part of that, do you receive material to review?
Yes.
Is one of the things that you discuss the financial health of the tenants at the airport?
Well, not per se. if there's an issue with one tenant or a tenant or a number of tenants about late payments, something like that, it comes to our attention when we get our monthly financial report.
Do you know who Gerald Hinkle is?
Yes, I do.
And of course, you know who Mr. Williams
Right.
is. After going through various documents yesterday, Mr. Hinkle and Mr. Williams testified that throughout 2009, Lux Air was late on its rent and other financial obligations. Do you agree that throughout 2009, Lux Air was behind on its rent and financial obligations?
Yes.
All the board members knew that, correct?
Yes.
You gotta activate your cursor on the screen, you gotta
Oh,
click it on it.
You're right.
and do it.
well, it's not working. All right. I'd like to show you these meeting minutes. It's coming on the screen. Something not plugged in. Nothing's showing up on the screen at the moment.
Do you have something on your screen? I don't have anything on mine.
I don't know why nothing's showing up on the screen.
Go ahead, take a break.
Let's go off the record.
We are off the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:12 a.m. We are on the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:14 a.m.
Mr. I'd like to take you to these October 13, 2009 minutes. And these are the regular Board of Director meeting minutes for October 13, 2009. And you were present at this meeting, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to take you to CL 00324. And this is the action that was taken at that meeting, and I'll blow that up for you. And if you see there, the second paragraph, a motion was made to authorize the Yuma County Airport Authority president to sign documents for this abandonment of a sewer line for Lux Air to commence the construction of their proposed general aviation terminal, and then there was a unanimous vote to approve that. Can you please describe what's going on here? What is this about?
Well, I believe the property that Lux Air was going to put their terminal on had an old sewer line through there, and you can't build over the top of anything like that unless it can be, unless it's abandoned. So we were doing that, and it was probably discovered by the engineer, I would guess, at the time they were doing their engineering for their building.
When this approval was made by the authority on October 13, 2009, based on everything that you knew at that time, did you believe that Lux Air was in good standing at the airport?
Objection to form, you can answer.
I'm not sure. You know, they were mostly not in good standing. So at this particular moment, I don't know if they were or not.
Based on what you knew at that time that the vote took place, did you believe that Lux Air was in danger of having its lease terminated?
We had no discussion about that.
And in fact, the minutes do not include anything about Lux Air's financial obligations at the airport. Don't you think that if the airport was concerned about Lux Air's financial status on October 13, 2009, that would have been brought up at the meeting?
I don't believe so.
And why is that?
The day-to-day operation of the airport is up to the manager of the airport. The airport board was encouraged to have Lux Air come to Yuma. We want to make sure that they would be successful, and we worked diligently, instead of Mr. Williams, to try to make sure that they would be successful. We had a number of issues for months, and as a real estate owner, and I own lots of square footage of space, the guy is late on his rent 30 days, I give him a 30-day notice. If he's late on 30 days, I kick him out. Gone. I manage 500,000 square feet of industrial space. I understand real estate. This man, or this company, was given chance after chance after chance after chance.
And so you would agree that once that notice of termination is given, if it's not complied with, you then have to evict?
Well, that's right, but I'm not sure we gave him those terminations until the very end.
Okay. I'd like to take a look at, did that come up? Let's take a look at YCAA 000939. These are the Yuma County Airport Authority Strategy Committee meeting notes. And these are dated October 20, 2009. And you were at this meeting, correct?
Yes, I was.
Do you know if a notice of this meeting was posted somewhere?
I don't know.
Who would know?
I would guess Mr. Williams would know, or Mr. Williams' secretary.
Let me just state on the record that we forwarded the agendas to you for that meeting, so you have them, and I can give you the numbers if you would like them.
Okay. I notice here on YCAA 000939 that there's only, well, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's only 10 individuals present at this meeting. Is it typical that there's only be such a few number of individuals at a board meeting?
This wasn't a board meeting, this was a strategy committee meeting.
Were all the members of the strategy committee meeting present at this meeting?
I don't know who all the members were at that time. I don't remember who they were.
So there might have been more that were on the committee but not present?
Typically, the committees are 4 or 5 people only. But all board members are invited to come to committee meetings if they'd like to.
Were all the board members present at this meeting?
No.
Do you know who was missing?
Well, that list of the board members I could take, but there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of us here. There's another 3 or 4 that aren't there. I don't know which ones they would be unless I saw the list.
Do you know who made the decision to have this meeting?
I would guess the chairman of the strategy committee at that point in time, and I'm not sure who that was.
So it's just a guess. You're not sure who
No.
called this meeting?
No, but the chairman of the committees is who calls the meetings.
And how were you notified of this meeting?
You're notified by Andrea, who is Mr. Williams' secretary, and she notifies all of the board members of any meetings.
What were you told was the purpose of the meeting?
I'm not sure. We get an agenda we don't get a total outline, we see an agenda what we're going to talk about, because with open meeting laws, you're required to do that.
And what did the agenda state was the purpose of the meeting?
I don't, this is
Okay.
3 years ago.
When did you first become aware that the airport authority was going to vote whether to terminate Lux Air's leases?
I don't recall.
Were you ever in any meetings regarding the decision to vote on Lux Air's leases?
Well, toward the end, when we did terminate, I was at the, I missed very few meetings. I make almost all the airport board meetings.
And by that I meant before this October 20th, 2009 meeting, did you meet with anybody to discuss a potential vote to terminate Lux Air's leases?
Not that I recall.
So at this October 20, 2009 meeting, this was the first time you discussed with anybody the possibility of terminating Lux Air's leases?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Do you know if anything happened that may have negatively impacted Lux Air's leases or its standing at the airport between the October 13, 2009 meeting where the board approved development and this October 20th, 2009 meeting?
No.
And in fact, in this meeting, do you recall that the board voted to terminate Lux Air's leases? Do you recall that?
No.
Can you turn to that page of the meeting?
Going to do that. Let's see here. If we go to YCAA 000941, let's go to the bottom. I'll blow that up, the conclusion. You can read that to yourself. And basically it says that airport staff recommends that the Lux Air lease be terminated, that it's the lesser of two evils. Do you remember that taking place?
I believe so, yes.
And then do you recall that thereafter the board approved to terminate the lease?
I think so.
After the airport authority terminated Lux Air's leases, did you talk with anyone at the airport about why the leases were terminated?
No.
Yesterday it was said in Mr. Williams' deposition that one of the reasons the leases were terminated was because Lux Air decided on or about October 19th or 20th, 2009 to lower their rent fuel prices. These meeting minutes don't include anything about that. Do you remember that ever being discussed at the October 20, 2009 meeting?
No.
Is this the first time you've ever heard of that?
Well, no, I've heard of that, but I don't know if we talk about it at that meeting or not.
Could you ask the court reporter to read the answer and question and answer?
Yeah, could you please read that back? Question and answer.
Is this the first time you've ever heard of that? Oh, no, I've heard about it, but I don't know if we talked at that meeting or not.
At
This
this,
is a question before that.
oh, the question before that.
Yesterday it was said in Mr. Williams' deposition that one of the reasons that Lux Air's lease was terminated was because Lux Air decided on or about October 19 or 20, 2009, to lower their rent fuel prices. These meeting minutes don't include anything about that. Do you remember that ever being discussed at this October 20, 2009 meeting? Answer, no.
Do you know if, in these meeting minutes, it does not discuss that rent fuel prices?
Rent fuel prices, what's a rent fuel price?
That's the wrong term.
That fuel prices were not reduced on or about October 19, 2009.
Don't recall that conversation at all.
Ever happening?
No.
Let's take a break.
We are off the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:28 a.m. We are on the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:30 a.m.
Mr. Williams testified yesterday that he was concerned about Lux Air lowering their fuel prices. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Now, you say you owned 30 properties, is that correct?
Right, we own probably more than that, but we own about 500,000 square feet of industrial space in 3 areas.
And what part of town do you own those properties?
East of town, 70 and Highway 80.
And how long have you been an owner of multiple properties?
30 years?
And you, I believe you called yourself an investor?
Yes.
And what type of properties over the years have you been an investor?
Industrial.
Only industrial? And what's industrial property?
Let me stop here. So you should vocalize your assent, yes or no, not just shake your head or
Okay.
nod.
Industrials are primarily leased to tenants who are manufacturers, warehousing, distribution. They're usually bigger buildings. Our buildings all average in size about 60,000 square feet.
And so what are your typical tenants?
Most of our tenants are AAA rated companies.
So these are commercial landlord-tenant relationships.
Yes, but we have a property manager who manages our properties for us. So I'm outside of, I deal with her, I don't deal with the tenants directly.
And so you're familiar with landlord-tenant contracts?
Yes.
Who drafts those contracts for you?
So for us, our attorney drafts them.
And who's that attorney?
Wayne Benish.
Do you have any property located here in Yuma County?
Yes, we do.
Do you know what a time is of the essence clause?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, from my perspective, it's wording of a document, be it lease or whatever it is. If it's very time sensitive, the clause will say the time of the essence to get this, whatever this document is done or signed or whatever you have to do with it.
Who drafts your eviction letters?
My property manager.
And who's that?
Property manager here in town here is Julie Pancrazzi.
Why doesn't your attorney draft those?
She's always done them.
Do they typically include in those eviction letters a time is of the essence clause?
I believe so, but I'm not sure.
And so what effect does a formal notice of eviction letter serve?
Well, it puts the tenant on notice that you plan to evict the tenant for the terms of the lease, for non-performance of some kind.
And so what do you do when a tenant does not comply with the notice of eviction letter?
Well, if we've served the letter on a tenant doesn't comply, then I tell the property manager to get the tenant out of there. Like they give a 3-day notice and a 3-day notice. We never had a problem with that. I guess you could call the sheriff. You could do a number of different things. Get the tenant out.
And so
Lock him out.
And so have you in fact evicted tenants before?
We've evicted a tenant in California from our properties. In fact, there we had to call the sheriff in to do it.
You haven't evicted anybody in Arizona?
No. I mean, I've asked people, I have told tenants that I will not renew their lease at the end of their lease, for non-performance, basically. They were always late paying my rent.
And do you think it's important that once you give that notice of eviction letter, that on the date that the tenant does not comply, that you go through with the eviction?
Objection form. You can answer.
Well, I think it's important, but also the best thing for a landlord to do is try to make the thing work. Every time you lose a tenant, they got to release the space, probably have to redo the space in the way of some kind of maintenance, painting, something else, which is expensive. So if you can make a deal work with an existing tenant, that's your best option. I mean, I've taken lots of leases to that point, and then we work it out with a tenant and we go forward.
Have you experienced with the tenant a situation where they repeatedly pay their rent late?
Oh, yeah.
And what do you do?
Well, again, over the last 5 years, because of the economic conditions, I've had a lot of tenants who pay late. But I make sure the property manager stays on top of it, and that they understand that, we want to work with them. I don't want to lose them as a tenant. A lot of times we give a 3-day notice. Tenant pays the rent. We go down the road. Might go for 3 or 4 months. Might go for 2 months. And then you got to give another notice. So it's an ongoing process. As a property manager and as a property owner, that's one of the, lack for a better term, the hazards of owning real estate. If you got, can I give an example?
Sure.
I mean, I have the government in a big amount of space in Yuma. The government's a great tenant because it's all paid electronically every month. I mean, they're probably the best tenant you can have, even though they have no money, but you get a check, you get an electronic transfer every month. And you have no issue with that kind of thing with the government, ever. So they're very demanding. They require lots of stuff from the landlord. But every month, I can give you the hour and the day the check will be there or the payment will be in my account.
What do you do in a situation if partial rent is paid as opposed to all of the rent that's due?
Well, it depends on the tenant and on your relationship with the tenant. If the tenant's called me or talked to me and said, hey, I can pay you $100 of the $200, oh yeah, and I'll give you that other $100 next week, I'll probably take it. Again, the worst thing to do is having to get rid of all the tenants. If you were hard-nosed all the time, you're going to spend all your time releasing your space.
So what would cause you to actually make that decision? I'm terminating.
Well, if a tenant is chronically that way and he lies to me chronically, I'm going to say, hey, I've had enough. We're not going to do it anymore.
All right, let me take a break. I may be finished.
We are off the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:38 a.m. We are on the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:47 a.m.
I'd like to show you this letter dated September 4th, 2009. This is CL 00001. This is from the Yuma International Airport to Tim Berger of Lux Air. And I'll blow up the main language here. And you see here, the first paragraph, it's they're concerned about Lux Air being delinquent on its obligations. They're delinquent on things attached in Exhibit A. Have you ever seen this? This was Yuma's eviction letter. Have you seen this letter before?
I don't recall.
Take a look at it, see if jogs your memory.
Can you show both pages?
Sure, I'll go to the next page here. It was signed by Craig Williams.
Can you show them?
Yeah,
So
I
we
forgot
can't do
to
it?
do
Okay.
that, sorry.
Why don't you just read the first page and then read the second page?
Okay.
Control one. Arrow. Control arrow. Arrow. Control arrow. Which arrow? I flipped it around.
Sorry about this shot, John.
Shift. Which one's arrow? Shift. Oh. Any one of them. Well, we'll put it to the left to move it.
Excuse me again, John.
Thank you.
This is the second page of the September 4, 2009 letter.
Mm-hmm.
It is CL 00002.
I mean, I don't think I've seen the letter per se, but the content letter we talked about at the board meeting, you know, this stuff doesn't come to us already pre-printed.
Which board meeting?
Or whatever board meeting. I'm not sure what date that would be. I would guess it would be either the late August meeting or a September meeting. September 4th, I'm not sure what date that falls
And
on.
what was well, if that was August, this was dated September, how could that be?
Well, you know, we discussed during our financial presentation, we asked Craig about what's happening at Lux Air. He gave us a short presentation. And then we go on. As the manager of the airport, it was his job to do the formal part about operating the airport. This is not the right page over here.
Wait till he asks you a question.
Let's go off the record.
We are off the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:53 a.m. We are on the record. The time on the video monitor is 9:57 a.m.
Mr. Ingold, you said that you believe this September 4, 2009 letter that you discussed it, and this is CL 00001. I believe you said you discussed it in August 2009?
Well, we discussed content. We didn't have the exact letter, and we discussed a number of times Lux Air's non-performance.
Okay, can you tell me when you discussed those things?
They didn't perform for a year, in excess of a year. So every month when we had our financial report, the subject of Lux Air would come up. Craig would give a report about Lux Air. His conversations with Tim, if a check was coming, when it would come.
And these discussions, where did these discussions take place?
Took place in the boardroom.
Do you recall any particular months that these discussions took place?
No.
If I went through various meeting minutes, would that refresh your recollection? We go through the year's worth of meeting minutes, if that would help you.
You know, I doubt it.
Do you believe when you voted on October 20th, 2009 to evict, do you believe you had the authority to do so?
Objection form. You can answer.
Yes.
Under what authority?
I mean, our attorney is at every board meeting, or a representative from his office every board meeting, and before we take a vote like that, we would make sure that the attorney would tell the board, yes, you have the right to do that. So we would always ask the question. We ask the question of him a lot of different things we talk about in our meetings. Can we do that? Do we have the authority to do that? And so we get approval before we make those kind of decisions.
On October 13, 2009, we previously looked at those minutes. The board approved the abandonment for the lot tie. You recall that?
Yeah, we looked at it earlier.
So after that took place, under what authority do you think you could then terminate the leases a week later?
I'm not sure they tied together. The abandonment of an easement has nothing to do with the lease.
Well, but it was for the general aviation terminal, and that's something that was required in Lux Air's leases.
That doesn't make any difference.
When you said that you do 3-day eviction notices, correct?
Yes.
Why do you do that?
When a person is, was short, or not paying, I tell my property managers, if they're not paying, give them a notice to perform. Not everybody does that. We do it.
Do you know if in this case, after the October 13, 2009 approval for the abandonment of the sewer line, do you know if a eviction letter was given to Lux Air?
I don't know.
If they were not provided a termination letter, do you think the airport authority was authorized to terminate the lease?
I would say based on Lux Air's past performance, I would say yes.
And by past performance, what do you mean?
Lack of payment.
What made it different this time than all the prior times that Lux Air didn't make payment and was not evicted from the premises?
Past times, we would notify them, I believe. Craig would talk to them, talk to Tim. Tim would furnish a check. But I think the board finally said, enough's enough. It isn't Craig's job to spend all his time collecting rent from Tim Berger. I think if you go through all the stuff that went on during that year, I would guess that Mr. Williams probably spent 30% of his time dealing with Lux Air?
And so this was a common pattern then of Lux Air not timely paying its rent, correct?
Yes. And if you read this letter, wording in there like, I want you to be successful. I want to make sure that you do get in there. I think the board wanted an FBO. We wanted Lux Air to be successful.
In the October 13, 2009 meeting where the board made the approval, what would cause Lux Air to believe that it was going to be terminated from the premises?
Objection to form.
I don't have any idea.
In other words, if you're a tenant at the airport and you're sitting there at a meeting, and at the meeting the board is approving development that you have to do under your lease, and that's all that's discussed about, what would lead a tenant to believe that they're in risk of termination?
Objection to form.
Other than that, they've always been late.
And if they've been late on prior occasions, what would cause them to believe that this time there's grounds for termination?
Objection to form. Now you can answer.
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
I'm finished.
I have a couple of questions. When plaintiff's counsel was asking you questions about what you would do with respect to a delinquent tenant, were you answering those questions in your personal capacity or as a representative of the authority?
Personal capacity.
Are you a lawyer, sir?
No.
Have you ever been a lawyer?
Don't want to be one.
Okay. I don't blame you. So, when plaintiff's counsel was asking you about what you understood time of the essence clauses to mean, do you remember that?
Yes.
Were you answering those questions in your lay capacity?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Do you know whether or not the airport has some sort of policy about application or insertion in notice of default letters of time of the essence clauses?
I don't know.
Will you look at what's on your screen, which is the September 4, 2009 first page of the letter to Mr. Tim Berger of Lux Air, which is marked CL00001? Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, I understand that you've just read that today, so you're somewhat familiar with the letter. Do you perceive this letter to be a notice of default letter?
No.
You don't?
No.
What do you perceive it to be?
I think it's a letter to Tim saying, you know, we have some issues. You're behind. I want to work with you to make sure that you are successful. You know, to me, it's not a negative letter. It's a very positive letter, I think, to them.
Can you put up the second page of that letter, sir?
Let's see. Well, back into that letter.
Perfect, thank you. Will you read the fifth paragraph on the second page, which is marked CL00002, please?
Yes?
I earlier asked you if you perceived this letter, the September 4, 2009 letter to Mr. Berger of Lux Air, to be a notice of default letter. In light of paragraph 5, is your testimony similar to what you just testified to, that it wasn't a notice of default letter?
Well, can I read the paragraph out loud?
Please.
Okay. In the event Lux Air fails to meet any of the terms and conditions set forth below, the authority may immediately proceed to exercise all its remedies under the agreements without further notice to Lux Air. You take the word may out is, I would say yes, it would be. But with may in there, it does not say it's going to be a letter of termination.
What is the, it also says notice having been given by this letter. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so your perception is, despite paragraph 5, that you don't perceive this letter to be the last straw if they don't pay up.
No.
Okay. That's all. Thanks.
We are off the record. The time on the video monitor is 10:07 a.m. This concludes disc 1, and this concludes the deposition.